It's 2014. I'm 9 years old, maybe 10, and I'm in year 5 of primary school. I am an animal-obsessed child who at this point has been mainly interested in The Lion King, Pokemon, and My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, and I go to the school library during lunchtime on a regular basis. I have been slowly making my way through books with animal protagonists like Astrosaurs and Taka the Otter, which is very boring and I never finished. I finally get the chance to take out a book I've been interested in reading for a while. Warrior Cats Into the Wild. I pick up the book, read it, and trust me, I don't stop. I can't remember much of reading this book. This was over 9 years ago. But a memory that sticks with me is that night I was going to Cub Scouts, and my mum was brushing my hair, and I was reading it still, and my mum had to stop me so we could leave. This was an introduction, though, to a much larger world. Now, my school only had 2 Warrior Cat books, Into the Wild and, weirdly enough, Forest of Secrets, skipping over the second book. I don't know if they had it at any point and someone took it, but they just didn't have it available. This led to me asking my parents to get the full first series, which they eventually did, and I adored it, which may have fueled a minor obsession. Now, at the time, I had already experienced fandom, even though this wasn't as necessarily commonplace for a child at my age at the time as it is today. I had interacted with and watched a lot of YouTube videos around Pokemon and MLP-FIM, which was interesting because this was the height of bronyism and I was 9. So, it was no surprise that I stumbled across the Warrior Cats fandom. It was quite different to how it is now. There were no, or at least no well-known, commentary YouTubers or theorists or challenge channels, and of course the Warrior Cats website was very different. Of course, the base of community hasn't really changed besides a few practices here and there. What I remember of the community at the time was the following. Instagram. No, not that Instagram. This Instagram. The Warrior Cats community back then was a place where art theft was common but unintentional, and where credit to artists was commonplace. This was also the time where the first round of adopts came into popularity, either as straight characters or through eggs. I even created a few of these. One of the most interesting practices, though, was the Warrior of the Week accounts. I know there is now a more centralised version of this, but it wasn't back then. Instead, Warrior of the Week accounts were usually attached to an artist, either run by one or directly on their pages. They would create trivia posts, draw art, and hold competitions. My favourite type of competition, by far, was where the creator would take one of the Warriors Wiki pixel arts and ask you to identify the character. The trick was to be on the wiki site and try to use as many identifiers as possible, whether this be the colour or the markings or what the pixel art pose stood for. Keep in mind there were a lot less poses at the time, and pixel art was a lot less refined too, which made it really fun. Usually if you won one of these competitions, you would win a piece of art of your OC. Roleplay. Most people seem to focus on the forums, but quite honestly forums weren't and still really aren't my thing. The mediums of roleplay I remember the most were Instagram clans. This would be where people would submit characters that would then be published on an Instagram page, either as a drawing or an image you got off Google, which you then roleplay as. This would usually be in a group chat or a comment of a particular post. The place I roleplayed the most, though, was Minecraft. People would run servers where they would build usually custom clans of their territories, and people would join one of them and roleplay using the bucket/me command. You were meant to move through the environment when you were roleplaying, but often in practice this wouldn't happen, as that time that would take you to move would take up the time that you would use to type. I even attempted to create my own Warrior Cats Minecraft server, which me and my friends did play on, and I still have some really laggy footage of said server. There were bigger servers too, of course. Some of these servers probably still exist, but the main one I remember was My Fallen, though I don't think this really exists properly anymore, but you can find relics of it. From what I remember, I was part of Shay Clan. Update: the community itself still does exist, it's just a gaming community now. Animation memes and compilations of animated comedy sketches like This Is Grey Stripe or any of the Mama Tad videos are probably one of the obvious ones. This kind of thing definitely still exists, but most of the time people now tend to publish each individual part, no matter how short it is, when compilations were more of the norm back then. I assume this is due to the rise of TikTok and YouTube Shorts and changes within the algorithm. It does feel quite weird though that some people have no idea what Firestar Doesn't Like Waffles is, and quite honestly I fear to know how few know about the relationship between J-Stripe and drive-thrus. AMVs and PMVs also seem to be a lot more common than they seem to be now, though this might be the case as more people are not labelling them as such. Fun fact, PMV means two different things: pony music video and picture music video, which was very confusing to me coming from the Bronydom to the Warrior Cats fandom, because all I can think about was the fact that they weren't ponies. Of course I did catch on though. Animated series. This was the era where everyone was inspired by SS Warrior Cats and were creating, or at least attempting to create, a series. Some of these were simply retellings of Warrior Cat stories, while others were completely original. The ones that come to memory the most are the Eloria series, Cow of the Wild, and the Unknown Blood series. There were many, many more. You may note that not all of those were Warrior Cats, but the people who were involved with the non-Warrior Cat things and Warrior Cats do seem to be the same people, so I'm grouping them together in this scenario. Then, of course, maps. Oh, come on, you saw this coming. Completed maps were not as common as they are now, simply because there weren't the same amount of animators who were happy enough to work in a map just yet. Plus, they simply just weren't as common. Where people will have map parts as part of their channel, it seems to be more of a one-off thing, rather than something that someone would do multiple times. This obviously changed, and I would say it changed relatively fast. From my perspective, it was due to well-known animators doing more map parts and collaborating to make these larger maps. Though this is just speculation and there's probably other factors too. This kind of flipped a switch within the Warrior Cats fandom. This was the point where popular creators started to get big enough audience that they no longer just felt like popular kids in your class. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, just different, and also signifies a community of a larger scale. That alludes to a bigger audience, which not only means that more people are watching, but more people are getting inspired. Unlike a lot of other things, animation is something that is a lot easier to get into, especially if you've been drawing before. You only need a mouse to do so, or a camera, pencil and paper, or heck, a DS. Nowadays, many use tablets or phones, but this wasn't really a common option back then, simply because the software wasn't as good. This usually developed into a Wacom tablet being purchased, or given as a Christmas or birthday present, and suddenly, boom, you can upload videos to YouTube easily. Memes are also an easy step into animation, with a few frames and a good base. These videos generally get the attention of other animators and usually create a very supportive audience, no matter your skill level. For some though, this can only take you so far when it comes to motivation, and this is an issue which maps address. People of all kinds of abilities host maps and take part in them, and many also host beginner-friendly maps. Maps overall get a lot more views than individual videos, which can help boost motivation and also helps to boost the sense of community as you work together with other animators. This probably also helps with working in a team and communication amongst that team to a certain extent. This in turn compels more people to make animation and the cycle continues. This has led to animators pursuing a career in animation, which is amazing! There's also a lot of artists too which have gone on to create art as a career because of Warrior Cats. The fact that this book series has produced so many high quality artists is astounding. I honestly can't wait to see the next generation of animators and artists come into fruition, bringing new ideas, new techniques, and an abundance of styles and personalities with them. You may notice, this is quite echoey. I abandoned my other recordings, which did sound better, but I had to do it under my table with a duvet over me, and it wasn't good. I couldn't breathe properly, so I generally just didn't want to be doing it, which isn't what I want. So we're gonna have to put up with it with this echo for a while. I will hopefully fix it at some point, but the time is probably not gonna be anytime soon. So you're just gonna have to put up with it for now. You're either gonna get something very dry and dreary, like, hello, it was 2014, whatever. Or you're gonna get personality, because I can breathe. So I went with the personality and breathing. I think that was the best choice in the end. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm Saber, and you've been watching the Saber Collection. Is that Disney Channel enough for you folks?